We are live.
All right. Welcome to another episode of PNL TV. Thank y'all for joining. Hopefully everybody is doing well on this hot June evening. So today we want to bring you a topic that we feel is very important and relevant for today's marketplace and the things that we do, our presence online. We're going to be talking about Cybersecurity Self-Defense 101. So before we get into that topic, I want to kick it over to introduce our co-host. So Denard Andrews here, chapter president of the Road New Lambda chapter.
What's going on, everybody? I am Walter Heron, the vice president of the Road New Lambda chapter of Alpha Fraternity Incorporated.
All right. Thank you for joining us. So now we want to take a quick moment to introduce our panelists for tonight. These are our subject matter experts that will be helping us to facilitate this conversation around cybersecurity. So first off, we're going to start with, we're going to go to my right, and we're going to start with Chris Marks. You have the floor to introduce yourself.
How you doing? My name is Christopher Marks. I'm a graduate of UL Lafayette. I have about 13 years experience in the IT field, close to 8 of those years in cybersecurity, and I currently hold about 10 IT certifications, including from cybersecurity to IT of like Windows 7, Windows Server, those kind of things. So glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Thank you for joining us. All right, next up, Mr. Sparsula Simmons.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sparsula Simmons. I am currently a manager in information security at State Farm. I've been with the company about 13, almost 14 years. I started out as an intern at State Farm and then came on full-time as a Java developer. Really focused on application development and the infrastructure. I moved to security in 2015, I believe, 2016. And initially I was just managing projects, but then more recently I took over a team who's responsible for multi-factor authentication, which is basically a way to validate that you are in fact who you say you are before we give you access to any resources, systems, private networks, or anything like that. I graduated from Jackson State University in 2008. I have my master's in project management from Keller Graduate School of Management. When it comes to certifications, so I hold my PMP, my AWS Cloud Practitioner certification, and I'm currently studying for my Certified Information Security Manager certification as well. And I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
All right. Got the reds in the building. All right, last but not least, we're going to kick it over to Brother Franklin Mosley. You have the floor.
Well, thank you, brother. And I just want to thank the brothers of Road New Lambda for inviting me to come join you all today to share my insight and my thoughts on cybersecurity. So just a little bit about my background. I've been in cybersecurity for 20 years, so quite a long time. And my experience in the field has been in the areas of authentication services, biometrics, threat intelligence, mobile, and cloud security. But prior to my time in software as a security engineer in cybersecurity space, I was a software engineer. So my passion within cybersecurity has been mostly focused on application security. And currently my role is head of product security at PagerDuty. So I've been in that role for about 3.5 years. Well, at that company about 3.5 years. So I deal a lot with the whole DevOps movement and integrating security into DevOps. You might have heard the term DevSecOps. But yeah, I've been an advocate for security for quite a long time. I've been a keynote speaker. I received my MS and BS in computer science. My undergrad was at University of Missouri. As you can see from my shirt here, I'm a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha. Came through Zeta Alpha back in spring 1995. Outside of security, I'm into tennis, traveling, photography. And again, thanks for inviting me, and I'm happy to be here to share my knowledge.
Tennis? I didn't know that about you. I didn't know you was a tennis.
I had a match last night, and I got another one on Thursday.
Okay. Once you find out about your friends on podcasts. All right.
Well, definitely thank you. Thank our guests for joining us, and thank you for the viewers out there that's going to join us here tonight. Let's go ahead and kick it off and jump right in. So I know something that we deal with these days in cybersecurity and trying to be safe and protect ourselves in the cyber world is credit card and debit card scams. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So when we get into debit cards and credit cards, those fancy terms that some people might not know that we were speaking, like authentication and whatnot, that comes into play here. So what Sponsor and Frank was talking about, you'll see it in credit cards. For instance, credit and debit cards. As we talked about let's talk about the best practices of why your debit cards and credit cards, or how to use them and what is involved. If you notice now, credit cards and debit cards have a chip in them. Mm-hmm. This came about because they wanted to break down or limit fraud from happening. And what happens is when you use that magnetic strip, it's very easily for somebody to pick up your credit card number if they have what's called an RF reader, radio frequency. Just that scan they can go through. So what the credit card and the debit card companies did is they put a chip in it, which helps give a one-time use code, like a single sign-on. Just that MFA that you heard earlier. If the chip and that magnetic field do not coincide, it sends a trigger off to your banking company. This is why you might be out and about and you get a notification. Hey, did you make this purchase? And sometimes you might have. If it's something out of the norm, let's say you have to buy tires. Tires are expensive. But if you're not used to spending that amount of money, or if they pick up that you might have had bought something in Dallas, Texas, at 8 o'clock in the morning, but then at 9 o'clock in California, that card is used again, then it picks up something else, and that triggers the fraud. And the reason that is because of artificial intelligence, anomaly detection, MFA, that multi-factor. If it doesn't go together, if something seems off, it triggers that alert and it sends it to the banks. It's no longer human beings, looking at screens. It's computers. So that whole cloud security, making sure that somebody's actually programming the cloud right, so that your alerts or your frauds or your cards are not being used. So the way you can actually limit, or I should say, start to protect yourself personally, is honestly when you go to Walmart, when you go to the gas station, when you go to the ATM, you want to make sure there's not a suspicious card reader. And what happens is these thieves, they have this, it's very slim, and they'll put it right over like an ATM machine, or right over that credit card machine at the grocery store. And the best way to do it is, I've done it now, but I'm paranoid by nature, is you grab it, shake it. If something don't look right, if something falls apart, chances are, it's a reader of something that was supposed to be there. So that's the key to it. Like, you look at it, like, understand we don't pay enough attention because we use credit cards every day. You go swipe, you go insert, but look at the reader. Look at it. Just if it seems bigger than normal, if there's any kind of issues with the card sliding in, if at the gas station, this is what I tell people: if you're at the gas station, grocery store, and you use a debit card, don't put in your PIN. Don't put in your PIN. You can always have that option to use it as a credit card, and that's what you want, because you don't want, if a reader is there or if somebody's trying to pick it up, you don't want them to know your PIN, because then it gives them access. And right now on the today's world, identity theft, that's the gold mine. It's no longer going to bank robberies or whatnot. Criminals are not doing that. Criminals are getting smarter. I want to get my money, I want to get away. Identity theft, social security, your PIN numbers, all of that is valuable. So just you look at the card reader. You want to make sure that it's not overly sized. There's no if it looks janky, if the card reader looks janky, then don't use it. Also too, there are apps you can download. There, of course, there's an app for everything, but there's card skimmers where you can see if there's a skimmer that's been around recently. I mean, download the app. I mean, I use it. So you want to make sure that you're not going to a shady place. So, Sparsler, Franklin, if y'all want to go ahead, talk.
Anything to add there?
Yeah. Somebody's on mute.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, no, I can definitely add to that. I think Chris hit on some good points about how the credit card companies go about doing protection. As he was mentioning, a lot of machine learning algorithms were in place to actually look for the anomalies that he was speaking of. So anomaly detection is a big thing. So anomalies such as if you're time traveling, like he was saying, you can't be in New York making a in-person transaction at 9 a.m. and then making a transaction 30 minutes later in California. That's a sign of an anomaly that really is not possible because that's what we call like time traveling. Other things such as habits. If you make a lot of small purchases, obviously you make a large $10,000 purchase that's outside of your normal activity, then you'll get flagged. Some of the stuff I wanted to kind of just mention on top of what Chris was saying was there are things you can do to monitor your transactions in case you are a victim of fraud. So something I do and I recommend people do is to set up through your bank notifications to where each transaction that occurs through that credit card, that debit card, will send you a alert to your phone. So every time my credit card is run, I know because I get the alert. So a funny thing about that is, I give one of my cards to my wife, and then every time I see like a transaction that she's made that I don't know about, I know because it pops up on my phone. I charge her. Hey, what's this charge? But you can get a notification for every single transaction. So in case your card is stolen, it is compromised, you'll know sooner rather than later that there is a fraudulent transaction. And something else that I recommend using credit cards over debit cards. You have better protection. With debit cards, you have to notify the bank within a certain amount of time to get a refund of that money. Also, during that period of time while you're waiting for those funds to come back, those are lost funds to you. Where with the credit card, if you report it, that transaction will be declined and reversed, pretty quickly, and there will be no lost money out of your bank account. So it's another plus for using a credit card versus a debit card. Also, as Chris was saying, use the chip card. If you do not have a chip card, but I think all the credit card issuers are issuing only chip cards. No one should have a strictly magnetic stripe card anymore. But yeah, the reason you don't want to use that magnetic stripe because you have less protection. There are people that are malicious in nature that will set up these skimmers to where they copy the information off your magnetic stripe, and they'll copy the information to a blank card with a magnetic strip, and then be able to utilize it, and then basically impersonate you and make transactions on your card. So use a chip card only. Don't use one strictly with the magnetic stripe. But yeah, those are just some things that you should be thinking about, and things you can put in place to monitor your transactions, to ensure that if you are compromised, that you know about it sooner rather than later, and then you can take action to get those charges reversed. I don't know if it was Sparsla, if you want to add anything to this conversation.
Yeah, I'll add just a few points. So I know we talked about like the RFID. So something that can be purchased for your credit cards is a RFID wallet. And that's something that keeps, somebody from getting close to you, and, maybe having a skimmer or something like that that can pull the data from your cards. You can purchase that off like Amazon, just, some of these sites. Again, read the reviews before you purchase. But you can get one of those, and it's really good to have that, just to, keep your cards safe and secure. Another thing we didn't really dive into, but I think when you get on other topics like social media and things like that, having a strong password, that's really, really important. So, we all have PIN numbers when it comes to debit cards. Don't pick 1, 2, 3, 4 or a simple PIN number that can be easily guessed. Try to pick something that's a little more complex. And if they, allow you to combine characters and things like that, do that versus picking something very simple. Those would probably be the main two. And I would say, most of us, we are creatures of habit, but get in the habit of reviewing your billing statements every month if you don't. Some of us, we just, I think, automatically assume that what's being charged on there are things that we charged, but that's the quickest way for a scammer to, and they'll charge very small amounts and you'll never notice, right? But get in the habit of reviewing your billing statements each month so you can recognize, make sure what's on there is actually what you purchased. And then you can catch like some of those smaller charges, because what scammers will do is they'll start with a small charge and then, slowly increase that so that it's not noticeable. And then after a while, money's coming off of your card, and you haven't even paid attention to it because it's so small. So get in the habit of just, checking your statements monthly. That's probably all that I'll
especially Amazon statements. Was partially hit on if you, at the beginning of the pandemic, and this is why it's important. People were making so many purchases on Amazon that Amazon saw an increase in fraudulent activities. The reason I know this is because I wind up seeing that something was charged to my Amazon account, and I went to the address, and I should say I reported it to Amazon, and they were already saying that, this is a fraudulent account. We have closed it down, and the charges was put back, which speaks to Frank's point, because it was credit and not using like a debit card, which takes funds away. And the only thing I could tell you is that, lastly, is that with a debit card, to have a credit card, something you don't use, because if you happen to use your debit card and they do cancel that card because if it's fraudulent activities, you're stuck like Chuck until you can get another card. Now, they'll ship you a card within 2 business days. And matter of fact, most banks, if you call them and request a new card, you can do that. I had a CISO that was paranoid who did it every 3 months just because. But to have that credit card ready, or because the only other way is to wait for the bank to open up to get an ATM card to get cash out. So always have a card that you don't use for emergencies.
And one more point I'll add is oftentimes we go into restaurants and we'll, give our credit cards and then we'll get a receipt, right? And it'll have your total, and then it'll ask if you want to put a tip, and then, the total after the tip. And most of us, will just put the, verify that the total is right. Not if we're going to leave a tip, cool. But if not, we won't even fill it in sometimes. And then we'll just sign it and leave it. What happens is you have some people go in restaurants and they watch for that, and they'll grab that receipt and put in a large tip, right? And again, you're gone, not even thinking about you check your bank statement and there's a $300, $400 charge that you weren't even aware of, or the amount of the purchase is way bigger than you thought it was, because we haven't, taken the time to fill in. Like, if you're not going to leave a tip, make sure you just scratch through that and put 0, but don't ever leave it blank. I know some people have a habit of doing that, but don't ever leave it blank. Make sure you scratch through it or put, 0 there. So.
Yeah, I just want to add a couple of things on that as well, because both Sparsla and Chris hit on some things I feel like I should add some additional information to. So we focus a lot when we talk about credit card and debit card compromise. We talked about the physical cards themselves being compromised, but I personally have been the victim of credit card fraud probably the last 2 times when the card was still in my possession. And the reason being is because the businesses or the merchants that I was using the card with were actually compromised on their side.
Boom.
So at that point, the hackers have gotten access to the database, and they didn't have proper protections in to protect the credit cards. So maybe they were storing the full 16 digits as well as the CVV code. That's that 3-digit code on the back of the card. And then now it's out there in the dark web on the black market. It's being sold and being utilized. So you may think you're safe because you still have your card. You didn't lose it anywhere, but there's still charges being racked up. So that goes back to what I was saying about having like notifications for charges that come up, or what Sparsa was saying about checking your statements. So then to expound on what Sparsa was saying about, checking your billing statements, for me personally, I find it easy to just use some of the tools that are out there to download the statements directly to my laptop. So using tools like Quicken or Mint or Banktivity, to where on a regular basis on some interval is downloading these statements. Now they're all in one place, and I can just quickly look and see what are the new charges that have hit my card. If anything looks out of the ordinary, then I would know sooner rather than later, and I can take action. So I don't have to wait till a billing statement is actually issued, but I can look at the charges that have come in, and it can be downloaded directly to my machine. So yeah, those are some other tips that you may want to consider putting into your daily usage or into your lifestyle.
Go back to that, Brother Mosley, because I think if you're not in the industry, you don't think about stuff like that. So you said there are apps or things that you can use to download.
Well, these are financial management tools. So tools that you can use to run a budget, to manage your finances. So you can look at any investments you have, or either your checking account, your credit card debt. They put everything in one central place, in the one central app. So like I mentioned, Quicken is one that a lot of people probably know about and have utilized. So it's a good financial management tool. And then I mentioned some other ones. I think a popular one that's becoming more and more popular is Mint, where you basically hook up Mint to all of your banking accounts, all your credit card accounts, and then it will basically download those statements and kind of show you how you're spending your money. It'll break it down by category so you can see what's coming in and what's going out. And it really help you to create a budget and really track your finances and help you reach any financial goals you may have, whether it's you're saving up for a car, you're saving for a house. You can really understand what are my spending habits and where can I cut back to really save more money to reach these goals. So those are just a couple of different tools that you can look at.
I guess I had and along the lines with credit cards and debit cards, we're in, as technology advances, we're getting more, offers to use these digital wallets on our phone. So when we add our cards, and then we can just, go to checkout, we can just, put our phone up against the scanner and check out or pay for the things that we need. So how would you say, how secure would you say those types of applications are?
To me, and this is my humble opinion. To me, they're about the same as inserting the card or swiping the card. It's just another means of transportation. Now, it's wireless. So the thing about wireless is that it only affects a certain area. That's why it has to be up close. You can't be 3 feet away and scan it. However, you still run the risk. Nothing is 100%. The banking companies, those who create the apps and create the digital cards where you just tap on it. Yes, it goes through testing, just like swiping and inserting. However, you still run that chance. But I'll say this: if the skimmer is on, and once again, if a skimmer is on, if somebody's close enough, you still run that risk of them getting your information. It's just another way of transmitting data.
Mm-hmm.
You on mute? Still on mute?
Still on mute.
There we go. All right. Now I just want to say, with the Apple Pay and the storing the card on the device with the digital pay, I think it's actually a little bit safer because you're not actually storing the card itself within Apple Pay. So there's a interaction between the device and the card issuer, and what you're issued onto your device is more like a pseudo card number. So each transaction, you're generating a unique code for that transaction that's transmitted to the to the merchant. And the card itself and the CVV code itself are not stored on your device. So if someone, like, I guess what Chris was trying to say, if someone were to actually intercept that Bluetooth kind of wireless communication between your device and the card reader itself, one, it's encrypted, so that's not really going to happen. And then if they were to compromise the device itself, it's just a one-time transaction code and not your actual 16-digit credit card number and CVV code. I don't know if you remember, but there was a big issue with
Bluetooth
Target.
yeah.
Target back in like 2013,
Mm-hmm.
where vendor, one of their vendors was compromised. That vendor had access to
the server,
their card reader machines. So then they were able to actually take all the credit card numbers and the CVV codes off of those readers, and then they were able to actually use those numbers. Well, with a digital pay, it's just a one-time transaction code. So if you steal the one-time transaction code, it's only good for that one time. You don't have a repeating compromise of your credit card account.
Okay.
So maybe I agree with you, Franklin. That's exactly what I was going to say. So your card information is not given to the retailer. So I think the Apple Pays and things like that are a lot safer. And I saw the question somebody asked, recognition safer. And biometrics is safe, I would say. Although I think, during this pandemic and even before, people have gotten really smart. They're even trying to figure out how you can duplicate somebody's face or, thumbprint and things like that. Like, they've gotten super smart. It is safer, but there are also laws in different states. Like, for example, Illinois, where you aren't allowed to use biometrics, in certain situations. So that's something, while it is safer, regulators and other things might prevent it from even being used.
Which brings up a good point. That here in the United States, we don't have something like a EU. Every state, when it comes to cybersecurity, and the laws are different. And just like Frank was saying, different banks and whatnot, you have to, everybody's principles is not principles different, but everybody is different on how they handle incidents or what they even consider a security breach or a security incident. So it's really still it's up to you. You can't outsource responsibility. The credit card companies, the debit card companies, they can only do so much. The responsibility of safe practices ultimately, results on yourself, educating yourself, using the proper, using as safe as possible, but things still happen. But I mean, you can at least eliminate your vulnerability. So,
and if I can add one more tip, but things, coming to me. I know we all get to a point where our credit cards and debit cards expire. And even mail that we get in the mail, we might just, like those credit card offers and things like that, we just throw them in the garbage. I would highly discourage that. I would suggest shredding credit cards and even mail, or if you're not going to shred it, at least take your information off of there, like your name and different things like that, because there are dumpster divers. They are real. I know somebody who actually had their information stolen that way. So when you have like old credit cards, debit cards, they've expired, shred them versus just throwing them in the trash, and even mail too, if you can.
We got another question that hit. AD says, I have my FICO membership and I've received alerts that my info has been seen on the dark web. How can you handle that if you haven't seen any transactions or noticed any identity theft?
So maybe I'll speak to this really quick, and then Frank and Chris, you guys can jump in. I actually, that's happened to me as well. And so with that, of course, I review like my statements and things like that. Didn't really see anything, but I still changed my information. When you get an alert like that, I think it's so easy for us to, just not pay attention to it, like, because we haven't seen anything compromised, right? But you don't know who they've sold that information or shared that information with. Right. So the dark web is so big, and there are people who actually pay money to get they'll pay another company to get your information. So then the horizon, right, it starts to broaden and get bigger and bigger, and your information starts to spread even more. So in that situation, I still would change my personal information, right? Like my emails, my passwords, and things like that.
Yeah, I just want to say it can be a generic alert. Because I've gotten those alerts before, and they were just very generic, like your information on the dark web, and I'm like, big deal, because it's my email address, and my email address is, I mean, you can find it very easily with the Google search. You can probably find it on my LinkedIn. So that being on the dark web is not that big of a deal. But what I would say is a bigger deal is maybe it was a password that was compromised and is found on the dark web. At that point, you should rotate that password. And then that goes into like my spiel about just password management in general. Passwords should be unique for every website, every application that you use. And you're probably wondering, like, how is that possible? There's no way I can remember all of these passwords and make them unique in nature to where it's not this hassle to try to log into these different websites. But there are tools out there like password managers. So a password manager is a tool for storing all your passwords. And that is what will allow you to have a unique password and your login credentials for every single site. So at that point, when it comes time for you to log into your bank, you can then retrieve the credentials from your password manager and plug that in to log into your bank. Or you want to log into, Facebook or Twitter, etc. Everything is stored in one place. Now you're asking me, is that safe? Well, you reduce the risk because now you have to remember one complex password to then get into this password management system to retrieve all the rest of the passwords. So your risk is reduced because you're not using the same password amongst multiple sites. So what happens is a malicious actor, a hacker, they'll compromise a site and they'll get like this trove of passwords. And they'll say, hey, I have this list of passwords. Now I'm going to spray them around to see where else they fit. And if you use the same password across multiple sites and they're spraying those passwords and trying them on these sites that you also use the same password on at another place, then you're compromised in another location, multiple locations. So remember, your passwords should be unique, and the passwords themselves should be as long as possible. The latest NIST, and this is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the NIST guidance that came out a couple of years ago, they recognize that it's the length of the passwords that actually makes it more complicated. It's not really the combination of you need to have this many special characters and this many numbers and this many letters. It's the length. And the reason it's the length is because what they do is try to brute force and try different combinations of these things to crack your password. Well, if you have a password that's 6 characters long, it'll be quicker for them to try all the different iterations of a 6-character linked password versus a 25 linked password. So make your passwords as long, as complex as possible, and then use a password manager to make sure they're unique for every single login that you have.
If you have to use a password.
Yes.
But if you have to use a password, right, probably the more preferred route is to not use a password, right? Use, like biometrics or something like that.
My next point was getting into multi-factor, because you mentioned it earlier. But even with multi-factor, I'm still going to have that password component being complex. So just to touch on multi-factor, a factor can be one of 3 things. So something that you know, and something you know in this case would be like a password, because it's something that is knowledge to you. It's something that you are. So then that gets into the biometrics. So it's your fingerprint. It could be your face. So for like facial recognition. And then the last thing could be something that you have. So it could be like a physical token that you have to present along with the other information to then be able to authenticate yourself. So it could be like a thing called a UB key, or it could be a push notification to your phone, because the phone is something that you physically have that you can then say, I have this phone, send me a notification here, and you can approve the login. So for multi-factor authentication, you have to pass 2 of those 3 factors to then authenticate. So my recommendation is for anything that's of importance, as sensitive in nature, like bank accounts, because that's financial. Maybe you're accessing Social Security website to access your benefits. For sites like those, make sure you're enabling multi-factor authentication. You're not just relying on a single factor such as a password.
That's a good answer, Frank. No, I mean, it's funny because I mean, no, that was actually going to be part of my answer, but I'm glad he said it. But what my answer is, it just those alerts leads us into my second topic, phishing. Like Frank hinted at it, it could be a generic alert, it could be a real alert, or it could be a false alert. And phishing scams are everybody has gotten them. Whether you see emails, whether you see on text messages now, you get these emails. Oh, your information on the dark web. Oh, your password is found out, and then there's a link. The one thing I've seen lately is your social security number. Your social security number has been compromised. Please hit this link and then verify. On those kind of emails, text messages, whatever, never click the link. Never. If you get a number that you've never recognized and there's a link, if there's an email with a link in it, understand something. And you have to know how things operate. You know how your bank does. If they're going to send you an alert to your phone, they're going to ask you, the generic, press 1, press 0. They're not going to put a link in there for you to go to. And also, too, if you're still suspicious, go to your computer, go to a separate screen, log into you think it's something for your bank that may be real, log into your bank, do a Google search on the contact number of your bank, call them, because I've done this. I've done this. I've gotten an email and I wasn't sure. I actually called them and I was like, hey, I'm seeing this email. Has my card been compromised? And like, no, I'll transfer you to our anti-fraud department. Like you don't go off, and this is the bad part. I know I might be talking to preaching to the choir, but they pick on the elderly, they pick on the young kids, the people that don't know any better. So that's why you need to know, but you need to explain this to your family, to your friends about it. Like, no, this is not it. Don't do it. Let's contact, the anti-fraud department. Don't click on any hyperlink, anything at all, because what they're doing is they're trying to get your information. And that's how a lot of breaches get done. Ransomware. It's not somebody sitting at a computer trying to break in, brute force the network. It's like, hey, click this link. And when you click a link, you create a doorway for them to get in. So you always gotta be ready for that, and we seen what can be done. The pipeline being shut down. Well, why is that important? Well, gas went up. Gas went to 320 here. Like it simple things. You just got to verify before you trust.
Yeah, I know that's a hard one too, because I know when you talk about targeted populations when it comes to phishing, it's unfortunate that some of the populations that are less likely or to know this types of information, those are the ones that are being targeted. I know my parents have been, thankfully it hasn't been nothing crazy. It's just been more stuff on their computer. They get these weird emails and they may click on the link thinking that it's real, but it turns out to be a virus and all these other kind of things, and have to, hey, we need to get your credit card number to reinstate all this other kind of stuff. And thankfully, my parents are still of sane mind to know that, if they get asked some certain types of questions, they know not to do certain things. But, sometimes they're still victim, because when I see some of those fraudulent emails, they do a very good job at making them look like that they're real, like a very good job.
Tattletale signs with that. If you're not sure, one is the actual link, the web browser. You get something and you look at the link or where it's from. There's always that extension that looks weird. Usually, like banks or anything like that, your gas company, whatever, sends a no reply. There's a no reply on the email. But when you start getting like a email address and then they want you to click on the link, another thing too, it's just simple grammar. Like there's been like punctuation errors or anything like that is usually that's the top tattletale sign. So you want to be careful with that. You definitely want to investigate it. And you just definitely don't want to make that mistake to click on it. Say any specific character besides the link. Yeah, specific characters. What you're gonna see a lot of times is a whole bunch of letters that don't make sense. It'll be like Christopher 123777 or XYBC. It's if anything looks like gibberish, those certain characteristics, that's a giveaway for a phishing exam, a phishing letter.
I think so, knowing certain things, because these folks have gotten really smart, like especially with the Social Security scam that's been going around. Those emails look legit. And so I would say just understanding certain organizations and entities would never ask for certain things via email, right? Like just being aware of that and cognizant of that your bank won't send you an email and ask you to, like put in your credit card information or something like that, right? Understand when you get those emails, just think about that. I actually got the Social Security one right before I logged off for work today. And I chuckle because I'm like, boy, they are not stopping. If anything, they're just picking up. But just, being mindful that most organizations, they're not going to, email you and ask you, like, click this link to verify your information or put it in or, things like that. And like Chris said, the behaviors of the organizations that you do business with. And if that doesn't seem like something that they would normally do, it's a very high likelihood that that's a phishing email.
Yeah, just to add to it, because there was a question about characteristics. I think one thing that we need to mention, a characteristic, is the from address. So if someone is posing as your bank, you look at the from address, and maybe the from address is not one that is from the domain of your bank. Say your bank is Chase, and you expect the email to be from chase.com, and it's from chase.com, but it's spelled CHAYSE.com. So look at the from address and verify that it's from a domain or from a email address that you would maybe associate with that entity that's seeing the email. So that's one characteristic to look at. Another thing that kind of comes up in phishing is a forced urgency. They try to make you react quickly, so you're not really able to think through and maybe analyze the email to maybe detect whether or not it's a fraud or it's a phishing campaign. So they try to force some urgency to get you to act quickly and then make that mistake in following through and clicking that hyperlink that Chris was mentioning. So forced urgency would be like, we need to talk to you right now. This is a high priority situation. You need to log in right now. But anything that forces you to take a quick action. And that's one other thing to look for as well. But those are just a couple of characteristics I would say that you should look for when it comes to phishing, because that's still one of the most prevalent and common attacks, and that really is a backdoor, is an entry point into a lot of businesses as well as personal accounts is through phishing.
Yeah. So Frank hit the nail right on the head. I was going to say the best course of action is to not panic. I mean, we see it every day. I mean, pretty much we live it. But if anything like that, force actions, just don't panic. I mean, literally, okay, because think about it. The Social Security scam. Your Social Security been compromised. What could be done differently now than what could be done in about an hour after research? The same amount of work. So just go ahead, don't panic, research it. And usually when you pull up a Google search, for instance, if you Google Social Security scam, you're not the first person, and it's online. You can read up about it, and they'll have like the messages almost word for word. Now they'll change it up, but you'll be like, okay, this is a scam. So
I know one thing that a lot of us are dealing with right now. We're all on social media, and most of us have multiple social media accounts. How can we defend ourselves against cyber attacks via social media?
All right, I have something that goes back to what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about password management. So another thing that is a way social media can be used against you. I think we've all signed up for an account at some website, and one of the things they ask us is these security questions. So when it's time for you to maybe reset your password or verify your identity, they want you to answer a security question. And a lot of times it's stuff like, what high school did you go to, or what's your hometown? A lot of information that is personal to you, but it's also information that can easily be found through a search of your history on the internet, and especially on social media. What's your dog's first name? What's your dog's name? You have a picture of your dog on your Instagram, and like, hey, this is me and Pooches at the park the other day. So that information could easily be used against you to then impersonate you or to then compromise your accounts. So a tip that I give everyone is to not answer the security questions with real answers. Most people I know do not answer those questions with real information.
Why you put my dog's name on the internet, man? You know my dog named Pooch.
So a word of advice is to not answer those with real information, but use just a random string of characters as the answer. But again, you're going to ask me, Frank, how do I manage that? The password management system that I talked about earlier. It's not only good for keeping track of the passwords, but you can also use that tool to generate a just random string of characters as the answer to that security question. So when it comes time to answer that question, now you refer back to your password management tool. You get the answer out of there. You just copy it and you paste it into that field on the website. And that way you're using just a random string. It's not information that someone can easily find doing a search of your history on the internet or through your social media. And that way you're better protected.
Yeah. So understand something. When we talk about password managers, we're talking about going to your iPhone store or your Google Play, whichever you use, and you can just download a password manager. We've been talking about it, but we forgot to tell people where to get it. Yeah, we get ahead of ourselves sometimes.
We
get excited. We get excited for this stuff.
So some tools that you can use are 1Password, LastPass. Yeah, there's several different ones. I'll tell you, I use 1Password. But I know some people that use LastPass, but there are several different vendors out there that provide a tool for managing passwords, and you just need to find one that works well for you in your situation. Because maybe you have a family and you need one that really supports having multiple people within the account, so everyone can have access to a password manager. So there may be one that's better for having multiple members of the family using the tool versus another one. But like I said, the two top ones to me are 1Password and LastPass.
And so when you're on social media, even if they don't have your password or whatnot, if you're on social media, you can easily tell when somebody is trying to get information about you. First of all, Facebook, you get these random young women just requesting you, no mutual friends, nothing like that. Yeah, if you ain't won the lottery, they ain't checking for you, cuz that's a bot. That's somebody trying to get to your page and look through your pictures and your history since you post stuff, and trying to figure out things about you, trying to figure out what's your dog's name, what's your mother's maiden name, all of that. Like it's crazy, it's simple, but what Frank is saying is true. Random strings of passwords. Now, I know this for Apple computers. If you're on a computer and you're asked to make a password, it will automatically generate a string of characters where you can save. Now, also too, when we talk about that, you got to remember that password. That 1Password, but it's better than trying to remember 17 different passwords. It is. You can use it on your phone, you can use it on your computer. It's very important. Social media, even LinkedIn, when we're talking about people trying to find information about you, man, finding, you know, your workspace, your work email. And why is that important? Because what a lot of people are doing is trying to access your network where you work. I mean, you might not think you're important, but you are. Your information is. So what they're doing is trying to figure out what is your email structure. So you might see phishing emails at work, trying to figure out what your username might be, because you might have your work email on it. Just trying to find that structure. Okay, this is how they use username. So now all I got to do is, once I have a username, is trying to figure out, the password. See, when you're trying to figure out the username and password, it's super hard. But once you have the username, now all I got to do is be patient for the password. So you just be careful what you post. Indeed asks for resumes. Don't put your cell phone number, your your house address. I know that's how we was taught when we first made resumes, but that's not something that you want to do. I mean, it's not. If you're on any kind of if you're on like Instagram or Twitter or Pinterest, they're trying to find out things about you. And the reason it is because they want to create, like I said earlier, they want to create the easiest way to enter either your information, like your computer or your company's computer. I see he's talking about Uber. He takes Uber everywhere. Well, let me make this campaign or this little ad that's Uber with an embedded link and send it to them. That's how they get you.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, Chris, that I would recommend too, right? The behaviors that we have on social media. So, not clicking links that don't make sense to us, or, stuff that we're unfamiliar with. Inboxes, Facebook and things like that. Getting inbox from or somebody you might even know, but their account has been hacked, right? And so they've cloned it. That recently happened to me a couple of weeks ago. My account was cloned. And so they were, portraying to be me. And then they were sending messages to my friends or people that knew me. And luckily, they reached out and said, hey, did you just send me a message? And I'm like, no, not even on Facebook. But that'll happen too, where they'll clone, like take your profile picture, create a whole account with your information, and then start just trying to figure out a way to get information from people or get more information about you. Again, all of those kinds of behaviors are ways that they try to get to us, and we just have to make sure we are mindful and watchful of our behaviors, things that we put on social media. Even things as simple as, like he said, he talks about Uber. I take Uber all the time to work. I'm in this Uber this morning heading to blah, 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 right? You're giving people free information to do what they want to do at will, regarding you. And educate not only, like the older generation and people in your household, especially children, right? Because they're getting to the age, some of us have children who are, teenagers, and they're loving social media, but educate them too. Because what I've seen recently is they're coming after us as adults, but they're also coming after our children on sites like Snapchat or TikTok or, things like that, things there where kids are. Making sure we're educating our children and having that conversation of what does healthy behavior look like on social media. Don't give out this information. If somebody asks for this, don't divulge that. Or if like I even tell my son, don't game with people you may not know. I know that's probably a little boring, but
Oh man.
it keeps you safe, because when you start to open that world up, our children, sometimes they aren't as mindful. Just think about the fact that we aren't mindful sometimes. So multiply that by 10 for a children. So teaching them healthy cyber security behaviors is important as well.
So I didn't think about the gaming part, and this is why you got to have a woman's point of view, because she thinks of things that you don't normally think of. Now I gotta watch who I game with on Call of Duty. So no, it's very important. Now I will say this: when it also comes to social media and our young kids, from a security point of view, I should say in everything, I want you to understand when it comes to social media, there is no security. I don't care if the page says it could be private. I don't care if you can limit who can see what. The business behind social media is for you to be connected. If you're not connected, then you're not doing, it's not social media. Another thing too is you don't know what's going on. You got to read the fine print when you log on or you make an account to these social medias and what you're actually giving them access to. Because Facebook got popped for that, selling information. That's how they're making their money on the back end, selling people's information. So you might be doing everything you think right, but on the other side is what you don't know on the back end. So that's why it's very important. And lastly, when we talk about kids and social media, and this is not a cybersecurity part, but it is kind of security. You got to let them know what you post can always come back to haunt you. As adults, we're a little bit more responsible. At least we're supposed to be. But these kids, man, they just so eager, and they're so eager to be popular. Here's the thing: it's all about how many retweets, how many shares, how many followers. The evolution of social media used to be. You remember Facebook, and when we go back to like my college days with MySpace and all that, it was always about a mutual connection. It's not the case anymore. It's people who follow you and then who you follow. So a lot of people want a lot of followers, but who are you allowing to follow? Somebody put in the comments, I'm tired of people, Bitcoin people requesting me. Well, that's just a perfect example of what I just said. These companies are selling the algorithms, the information, and they know if you talk about Bitcoin, then I want to know if you talk about Bitcoin so I can promote myself to you. You got to be careful. You got to watch your behavior. I know this is an extreme, but there are certain applications on the internet you can get where it actually just do random searches so nobody actually knows what you're actually doing. It just randomly. That's just a tidbit, but you really got to be cautious and understand that whatever you do, there's a price, even if it's just a little annoying, or it could be something serious. But you're going to pay to play. You're going to pay to play.
Yeah, Chris, you actually hit on something that I think is really relevant that we talk about and we make people aware of. So you mentioned like Facebook and them selling your information. We have to be cognizant and careful about the information we share with these companies because we trust them to protect this data, but that's necessarily the case because we're not sure of the security practices and the privacy practices they have in place when it comes to protecting our information. So without your knowing, your personal data could be compromised and accessed by some hackers, malicious actors. It could be even nation states like a South Korea or a China that has your personal information because it wasn't well protected by these companies. So to protect yourself, I would limit the information that you share with them and only share what's necessary. And also what I wanted to point out as well is that unfortunately we are I think most of us probably on this stream or people that are watching are in the United States. We don't have the same protection rights as say like the EU. Chris kind of mentioned that earlier and he was talking about the European Union, where they actually have a framework to protect their citizens and to make sure that companies abide by certain regulations to protect the privacy of those citizens. So it's called the Gdpr, which is the General Data Protection Regulation. And basically, like I was saying, it's a legal framework that sets guidelines for the collection and processing of personal information from individuals in the EU. So they actually have a little bit more concern about the privacy of its citizens when it comes to data than we actually do in the US. And I hope that one day we can have a national framework or something to be able to regulate the protection of our data and not just leave it up individually to these companies to say that they're going to protect it and not actually do that. So yeah, privacy is a kind of an issue of mine. You can tell it kind of get me worked up a little bit. Yeah, I personally don't even share information with companies I don't really feel comfortable with. So I limit the scope of what I share, because I know that there's been so many instances where there's been data breaches and your data gets out there. And one tool that you can use to actually determine how much your information has been compromised, there's a site called Have I Been Pwned? And that site actually allows you to enter in your email address or some information. It will tell you all the different data breaches that your information was compromised in. It will tell you exactly what kind of information was compromised, whether it was just your email address, home address, phone number, passwords, etc. And it will just tell you all the data breaches that you've been a part of. And what they do is they actually collect all these data breaches that happen at these companies, and you probably see them in the news, and they're probably happening more than you actually realize, because it seems like there's one like every day or every other day now, and it's just a big database of all the information that's been aggregated and collected into one location. So again, that site is called haveibeenpwned.com, and yeah, thank you for putting that up there. I was going to try to figure out the best way to get the information out there, but thanks for putting it out on the screen. So I encourage you to go put your information in there, and it's safe, to put it in there. They're not collecting information, and you can then get a sense of the scope of the compromises that you've been a part of. Oh, and if you have been compromised, like a password for etc., make sure you rotate that password on the site that's been compromised.
All right. I think y'all dropped some great gems. I know I took some notes, and I think our guests are taking some notes as well. So I wanted to give each of you an opportunity to just kind of leave us with some closing thoughts before we come to the close of this discussion. So Sparsla, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I would just say that, when it comes to your information, educate yourself. When it comes to social media, make sure you have good hygiene when it comes to cyber security, right? Whether that be, with your cards and using them online, whether that's how you engage on social media, teaching your families and things like that. Just make sure you are educating yourself on things that could happen. Take precautions as best as you can. And I'm a proponent of get away from passwords if you can. Or if you can't, they talked about some password management systems. Take advantage of those. Really use those if you have to use passwords. And lastly, anything you put out on social media can be traced. I think so. I told you guys kind of my history that I didn't grow up in security, but I've been in this space for a little bit. And that is one thing, especially being in leadership, that I have learned is everything that you put out there or anywhere, even in your jobs, right, can be brought back up. It can be brought back up. So just be mindful of that, right? How you engage at work and things like that. It can be brought back up. So.
All right. Thank you for that. Frank, you want to take it over?
Yeah, I just want to just reiterate some of the points that I brought up today. So I just want to talk about passwords. We're not getting away from passwords in the immediate future. So if you have to use a password, I want to give you some rules to abide by when it comes to your passwords. So you want to make them long, 15 plus characters would be ideal. Like I was mentioning earlier, the longer they are, the harder they are to break. And also they should be random. So don't use dictionary words, make them completely random characters, make it the most complex you can within the rules of that website, and then make them unique. So different passwords for every single account. And also they should be private, never share them. And if you do have to share them, don't send them over insecure channels. So make sure that you're sending them via encrypted transmissions, but nothing insecure. And as I mentioned earlier, use a password manager. They're great for generating secure passwords based on the criteria, and they remember all the passwords for you, and allows you to easily, like I said, use different passwords for everything. And I mentioned some tools earlier, like 1Password. There's Lastpass, and Lastpass has a free version for a single device, as well as Dashlane. They also have a free version for a single device. And like I mentioned, you can check to see if you've been breached. You can check if your email or phone number has been in a data breach and any other additional information that's been compromised. And lastly, when it comes to security questions, like I mentioned before, never use any real information. And answers should follow the same rules as I mentioned for passwords. And I just want to say thank you to the New Lambda Bros for inviting me to come here to join you all today and take part in this conversation.
So if I could just, add with Franklin, I think we'd have a good conversation around passwords and them going away. So for those who are on the call who may not understand why he said that, why passwords are going to be around for a long time, if you guys think about it, right, everybody uses a password for everything, like everything. And so he's just saying that we got a long ways to go before we get rid of them, but I'm hopeful. I hate password stuff. We go back.
Okay, I understand. All right, Chris, any last words?
First of all, thank y'all. This has been a part of my life and part of my mission, just to get more information out about cybersecurity, especially in our community. I appreciate you using your platform to do it. I'm going to go down the middle of the road with Sparsla and Franklin. But first, let me say this. One way I learned about cybersecurity is always by being around people who are smarter than me in cybersecurity. So that's why I'm glad I know Frank and Sparsla. I appreciate that. But I'm going to go in the middle of the road. If you can get away from not using a password, don't use it. However, if you do, make it complex. And then you can also, it could be random, or you can do a play on words. You can write just like alpha is ice cold. But then change out the I's to be ones, change out the O's to be zeros. You do a play on word, you write it down. You put in your password manager. Oh, don't write nothing down on a sticky note. No sticky note, no writing it down, don't put it on your desk, nothing like that. And make sure you have a backup. People might think this is crazy, but remember, the older generation had filing cabinets where they kept copies of important things. Keep a copy of your password manager password somewhere encrypted. Always encrypt your device, whatever it is. Make sure it's always encrypted. You can find ways to send information, and this is specifically, or I should say, especially like when it's tax time. If you got to send your accountant or any kind of personal information, that's very valuable. That's the time when you used to be using secure email. You need to be calling on the phone. Hey, okay, here's the username, but I'm gonna call you with the password. I'm gonna call you with that number. Matter of fact, if you ain't got to write it down, call them up. If that's that transmission that Franklin was getting at, and that MFA, is definitely important. We could talk about this forever. And really, I want people to understand that even doing this, you're not 100% foolproof, but you are limiting the scope. You can always get like Experian or those identity theft. Be proactive, And if you think your credit card has been compromised, something like that, just go ahead and switch it out. Just be ready for it. So I appreciate everything. I appreciate everyone being here, taking time out and talking about this. I appreciate people asking questions. It's just about educating, our people.
And real quickly, if they would like to get in touch with you all for any kind of security advice, how can they reach you?
So you guys can find me on LinkedIn. My email address is SparsulaSimmons@Yahoo. So my first name, last name, all lowercase, all together. I work at State Farm. So if you know somebody who works there, you can find my information. Yeah, you should be able to, if you Google me, I'm out there. So a bunch of ways you can get a hold of me. But mainly LinkedIn is the way to go. And thank you guys again for having me and allowing me to talk on this topic. Education, especially like Chris said, with our folks, is super important because I think we don't pay attention, enough attention to this topic. So.
Brother Mosley, how can we get in touch with you?
I also, I'm on LinkedIn. That's a great way to get a hold of me. So on LinkedIn, it's just /Franklin Mosley, just one word. So you can find my profile that way. And also on Twitter, it'd be FP Mosley 3. at FP Mosley 3. And either way, you can send me a message. We can connect and we can continue the conversation.
And Brother Marks.
All right. So again, first and foremost, LinkedIn. It's Christopher Marks. I'll be the handsome brother in the suit. You can go ahead and click on that. And you got any questions, some legitimate questions, you can do that. Or if you want to email me for cybersecurity, my email is chrismarks@cmarksgroup.com for security questions. So that way, be the best. Well, actually, LinkedIn be the best way. So.
All righty. We definitely want to thank you all for joining us tonight. We're going to go ahead and close it out. As usual, we're going to give an update of what we got coming up. As far as the Rho Nu Lambda chapter, this upcoming Saturday is our Project Alpha event. If you know a young man that is of the age 12 through 18, please have them register and join us virtually on Saturday for our male versus man talk and our Project Alpha talk on Saturday. If you want to reach out to us, you can always visit our website to see what we have going on. We are at roadnewlambda1906.org, or you can send us an email at roadnewlambda@gmail.com. You can always follow us on Facebook to see all our updates here at Rho Nu Lambda Alphas, or you can follow our Instagram, and it's going to be all of our information will be there at PNL Alphas. And the registration link for Saturday's event for our Project Alpha is in our bio. I'm gonna shoot it over to Brother President.
All right. Again, I want to thank each of you, our panelists today. You can definitely tell that each of you are very passionate about this conversation. And I think, like you said, we could go on this topic for hours and hours and hours. So I want to thank each of you for joining us today and imparting your wisdom on us as well as our viewers. Thank you again. And we hope you have our viewers out there. I hope you got some good tips to protect your footprint as you do things in and out of online and Instagram and social media and things like that. Just make sure you protect yourself, protect those that are around you, protect your family. If someone around you that you feel that they could be a benefit from this information, by all means share that. And if you need to contact one of our panelists, they've given you the information to do so. That being said, I want to wish you all a good evening, and we will see y'all next time. Peace.